Hey y'all, and welcome to today's video. I'm so excited because today's video is going to be all about eyeshadow palettes, my favorite, but specifically we're going to talk about 12 palettes that I think have actually interesting color stories. I did a video like this about a year and a half ago, maybe. I was inspired by my friend Angelica Nyqvist. She had done a video like this, and we see a lot of eyeshadow palette releases. I love and buy a ton of eyeshadow palettes, and a lot of times we see monochromatic color stories, we see rainbow palettes, and while I love all makeup, I don't discriminate, neutral color, rainbow, monochromatic. I really love when a color story has a point of view. It looks very curated. It looks like every shade was well thought out. Maybe it has a theme, or maybe it's just like a really good pairing of shades, and the color stories are actually interesting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I've pulled 12 different palettes. Some of these are very new to my collection. Some of these I've had for over a year now, and they're older palettes, but I thought it would be fun just to sit down and talk about these with y'all. Maybe you could shop your stash. Tell me what palettes you think have actually interesting color stories, or maybe you're looking to expand your palette collection. This is just going to be a fun video where we talk about makeup. I want to say, if you were new here, hey, my name is Heather and makeup makes me happy. Here on my channel, we don't try to be perfect. We just want to have a good time with our makeup, whatever that means. I do upload lots of new videos every single week, so I hope that you will subscribe before you leave today. But we do have 12 palettes to talk about, so let's jump into it. Alright y'all, getting started, I do want to let you know, if you want to see swatches and tutorials of any of these palettes, I do have videos on my channel with all of these swatches, tutorials, things like that. Today's video is just going to be more talking about the palettes, telling you what I like about the color story, why I think they're actually interesting, and I will link all of the palettes down below in the description box. First up, I pulled the Sigma and Cinderella Disney Princess palette. This one I pulled because I remember when this palette launched, I was just so into this color story. Now, looking at this one, I remember when this launched. First of all, I love Cinderella. I loved Disney as a kid, and I felt like Sigma really did this, like Disney for adults. Not that younger people wouldn't love playing with this, but I felt like this was not cartoony Disney. It was elevated. It was, I mean, I'm 35 and I felt like this is luxury Disney vibes. I remember I was actually on vacation when this launched, and I had an alarm set on my phone, and I bought this the minute it went up on the Sigma site. I really love the curation of this color story. I love that we have these six more neutral tones right here, and that in the neutrals we have some variety. We have both mattes, we have shimmer, and we have shimmer with a lot of sparkle. I like that we have this really deep black shade and this really light vanilla shimmer shade. I think that gives a lot of versatility to the palette. And then we do have some blue green shades and some purple mixed in too. So the selection of colors here, every time I use this palette, I feel inspired. I don't want to create just the same looks. I see different color pairings, and I really enjoy this one. I do not regret my purchase whatsoever, because I feel like even, what is this? Did this launch in September or October of 2021 maybe? And I still find myself going back to this palette because it's just that beautiful. I love the navy and this kind of forest green with these more purpley shades over here. This purple right here is so beautiful because it's definitely purple, but it also has some blue reflex to it that pair really nicely with these blues. I can definitely tell that a lot of thought went into this color story. It wasn't just like throw some shadows in there. It's curated well, and I love it. Okay, next up, I had to pull out one of my newer palettes, which is the ADEPT Inspired palette. So this was inspired by the show Arrow, and I know the owner of ADEPT is a fan of the show, working on this palette for so long, and it really shows. The selection of colors is so perfect with this palette. I've used it several times now, and I create looks that I didn't necessarily expect to come from this palette. I do have a video on this palette, and then I have a second look on shorts. I will have more coming. It just takes me a little time, but the matte selection in here is really, really beautiful. And I like how, of course, we do have dark and lighter tones, but I love how we have this mint like pastel-y green, and then we have this more murky green. We have a beautiful dark shade, a more yellowy green, and it's just all the mattes flow really well in here, and they don't feel repetitive, even though it is 5 green leaning matte shades. We also have some beautiful multi-chromes, sparkly shades, duochrome shades in here that I think are really well thought out with the greens. So this shade right here shifts really beautiful. Definitely watch my video on this one if you haven't seen it, because I do tons of swatches in different lightings, different angles to show off the multi-chromes. But throwing in the blues in here, really, really beautiful. I created a really pretty, like, almost like aquatic blue look with this palette that I enjoyed. We have some more pinky tones, some more yellowy greens, some more jungle greens, some blue in here, and I just feel like it's very versatile and, again, actually interesting. Now, this palette is going to be restocking, so I will put that info down below, but I just feel inspired pulling out this palette, and I'm excited about it. Next, let's talk about this palette from Bella Beauty Bar. This is the Strange and Unusual palette. So this is a launch from Halloween of last year, and Bella Beauty Bar was a newer to me brand. I got this palette. I want to say this was maybe the second palette I tried from the brand. Now, some of the palettes I talk about were gifted to me. Some of them I purchased myself. The Sigma Cinderella, the ADEPT Arrow, I purchased those myself. This was gifted to me. I do have some affiliate codes or discount codes with some of these brands. It will all be in the description box. So if you're looking for codes to save, definitely check there. But this palette blew me away because I knew I really liked this color story. I saw the color story when they were sneak peeking it over on Instagram, and I knew I had to have the palette because the color story, like, just look at the color story. Something about the neon green, the white, the black with the sparkle, this purple to black shifty shade. This palette has multi-chromes, no pressed glitters, just all extremely beautiful shadows. But when I got this palette in my hands, I realized it's not just a beautiful color story, it's a spectacular formula with a beautiful theme. But the reason it fits this video is because we have this really colorful palette with 15 different shades that's not repetitive and also not a rainbow palette, and I love that. I love that we have the multi-chromes in here. I love that we have 4 different greens in here, 3 different like purpley, well, actually kind of 4 different depending on the multi-chrome shifts. Purple shades in here, the whites, the black, the pops of orange and red make this palette so versatile, and it just really solidified my love for the brand because I'm like, wow, they can do a color story. All right, palette number 4 is also an older, I hate to say old, but an older palette. This is the Unearthly Cosmetics Not Normal palette. Now, this one is old because it has Alien Cosmetics on it. Unearthly Cosmetics used to be Alien. They rebranded a while ago, and my palette is still like the one with the original branding on it from Alien. But look at this color story. Unearthly pretty much knocks it out of the ballpark when it comes to color stories in general. They usually have a really cool selection of shades. They're usually very curated and always unexpected and inspiring to me. But this palette I really fell in love with immediately because I want to say it's like a neutral palette for color lovers and a colorful palette for neutral lovers, because we have these few neutral shades, these just right here, these 3, and then we have 9 other more colorful shades, but I can go super colorful with this. I can use the greens and the purples together and create a bold, colorful look. Or you can do the greens and the purples separately, mix in some neutrals, and you have a really less intense but still colorful neutral look, if that makes sense. Like I said, the brand always puts out fun and interesting color stories, but something about the purples and the greens together, which is a favorite color combo for me personally, just looks so beautiful. Every shade in here works so well with one another. There's a perfect mix of like mattes and shimmers and more iridescent duochrome type shades that make this one actually interesting. Okay, let's talk about Beauty Bay, because I say all the time, I really like Beauty Bay shadows. I think they have a great low price point, and specifically their palettes that are their 20 pan format like this with the curated color stories are my favorite, and I like so many of them, but this one really stands out for me. This is the Dark Fantasy. I like the Wilderness palette, so that's what I was thinking, but the Dark Fantasy is the one that I chose because we have an interesting selection that I feel like really fits every season. I want to say they launched this around the fall time, so maybe it was like a Halloween-ish release, but not Halloween themed. I could be wrong about that though. But we have the greens and the blacks and the purples, but we also have some silvers in here, and I love that they added this like pop of metallic blue and pop of navy blue in here. We also have kind of this unexpected burgundy red shade, and I just feel like this palette is versatile while also being very curated. I like that we don't have any pinks or yellows or oranges in this palette. They left it really more to the cool side with the greens, the purple, the blue. We have some silver. We have just a really beautiful selection of shades. And one thing I really like about when Beauty Bay does this type of format for their palettes is they give us a variety of formulas. So we have mattes and shimmers. We have mattes with a little bit of sparkle in there. We have really sparkly shimmers, and we have more wet metallics. So within the interesting color story, there's also really interesting formulas, and I have fun every time I play with this one. Okay, let's talk about the palette that is on my eyes today. This should already be up as a YouTube short for y'all. If you haven't seen it, definitely check the shorts, because I want to say I've already posted 3 eyeshadow tutorials to shorts this week alone. I really like creating tutorials for Instagram and TikTok, as well as these long form videos on YouTube. I do upload 5 videos at least a week on YouTube, and I like to post stuff on TikTok and Instagram in between, and I've been trying to post those on YouTube shorts as well so that y'all can watch them easily. But I am of course wearing the Crazy in Love GlamLite Chucky palette. This one is the newest palette to my collection. I did a full video on this if you want to see it, but for today I really wanted to play with the purples and the silvers together, and I'm loving it. This color story is so interesting to me. I really like this. If you are looking for a smoky palette, this is it. When I first saw this color story, like a lot of y'all, I immediately thought of Melt Beetlejuice, one of those palettes, but expanded and improved, honestly. I love that one so much, but with this, you get even more. You get these purpley tones like what I'm wearing today, of course. You get this really bright silver and these more like kind of muted shades that I think are really fun. The formulas in here are top-notch, amazing, and I wanted to do something today that was just purple and silver. No grays, no neutrally tones. So that's what I did for this look. I just think GlamLite created a color story that gave us what we wanted from GlamLite. It gave us a really good curation. It gave us depth and dimension while still having the bright shade of the silver. We have dark mattes and we have some more mid-tone mattes. We have colorful mattes and neutral mattes. And the packaging, of course, is just over the top crazy cool. Okay, I'm looking and I'm realizing that these are all indie palettes, which makes sense because indie brands, meaning independently owned, not owned by a large corporation like Coty or Kendo or something, that they make good color stories. So the next one I want to talk about is this one from Ace Beauté. This is the Aura palette. Look at this. That's so pretty, right? This palette could have been so expected because we have these beautiful cool tone purples, then we have these beautiful warm tone purples, and I love that. Really, really, really beautiful. But what really take this to the next level is these kind of murky neutral tones that we get and the pops of like berry. I really like that they didn't just do a purple palette. I like that we have the cool tone purples and the more warm purples. I think this palette has such a beautiful color story, and it's still not a crazy amount of shades. We only have 12 shades in this palette, which I think a lot of people really like 12 pan or less size palettes. So I wanted to talk about this one because I think in the 12 pans, they still gave us some beautiful versatility. Okay, one of the best palettes this year so far. I know we're not very far into the year, but I have fallen in love with the Lure palette from Blend Bunny. This color story, it does something to me. Like, it speaks to my makeup loving heart. I can just feel it when I look at this color story. Oh my gosh, this one is so great. It's a mostly matte palette with 6 beautiful, beautiful shimmer shadows, one of them being a multi-chrome. This layout, first of all, is so satisfying, but I love that we have these kind of cool tone pinky neutral shades, and then we have color. We have green, purple, aqua, blue, pink, everything. Every time I play with this palette, it does what it needs to do. It is such a beautiful, beautiful palette. The color story is so well curated. Blend Bunny does beautiful rainbow palettes, but I have really loved seeing what they've been doing with these curated color stories. And this one is just so, so pleasing for me to look at. I totally feel the mermaid, sailor, siren, ocean vibes with this one. The color story is not only actually interesting, but it's very inspiring to me. I have fun every time I play with it. I want to do different looks. I don't just want to do monochromatic looks. I want to mix and match the colors. And I just think for a larger palette, it still feels very curated and special and well thought out. Okay, I have to talk about the Serenity palette from Cosmic Brushes. This was one of my favorite palettes last year, and they have launched a palette this year that I'm loving too so much. But when I'm paring down the list for right now, because maybe I'll do another video like this in the summer, let me know. This color story just, it stands out. Look at these really beautiful lavender tones, these olives right in here. Overall, I would say this is a very like green, blue leaning color story with some purple and a beautiful pop of orange. We do have this beautiful shade up here that's like an iridescent multi-chrome called Opal. I was going to say April. Opal. And then we have a beautiful selection of mattes and shimmers and metallics. Really, really beautiful shades. This palette has not neutrals, but I would say some colorful shades that lean a bit neutral, like olive over here. We do have this beautiful gold, a beautiful black in here. So I feel like, of course, you can go colorful, but you can also do a really toned down look. And I like that a lot about this palette, that I can create something super bold and intense. I can create something very easy and effortless. I can create something smoky and dramatic, something light and breezy. I feel like there's variety. And even though, like I said, what is this 20 shade palette? Within the 20 shades, they didn't just do a rainbow. They gave us a curation. They gave us interesting shades. They gave us a color story that I want to use over and over and over again. I want to play with this palette. I want to reach from this palette. The color story, of course, is beautiful. The formulas inside are beautiful. Just, I can tell a lot of love and attention to detail went into this one. Okay, I've only got a few left, so I have to talk about the Salon 2 palette from Oden's Eye. A lot of people loving this palette. I know a lot of y'all bought this one and love it just as much as I do. But this palette, again, we have 20 shades and a gorgeous selection of shades. I really like the way they laid this palette out and the tones that they chose. So right up here, we have these blue tones, but the blue tones are pretty unique, especially this shade. I feel like I point out this shade every time I talk about this palette because it's really this kind of like washed denim type of shade. And then in the middle row, we have these beautiful lavenders going to a deep dark purple. And then the bottom row to me just screams flame. It's when a flame starts, when it starts to get hot, and then when it smolders out. I love that. Even this, if they were to make that a 5-pan, genius. I really like the selection of shades in here. I think they all play so well together. You can stick to the rows if you're not sure what to do with this palette, but also just each row works so well together. They really did a great job selecting the mattes and the shimmers and the metallics, this being more of like a topper shade that I think is so pretty. They just all play so well together, and I think this is one of the best color stories that Oden's Eye has done. It's really, really up there with their top best palettes because the selection they gave us is so beautiful. I love the mix of cool tones with warm tones. Like I said, I like when thought and love and care goes into palettes. Okay, another one that I've talked a lot about how much I like the color story is the Nomad Provence palette. This one is a intense color palette designed on location in Provence, France. I really like this color story. To me, this is a very early 90s color story. I picture denim and the big white daisies, bucket hats. There's just something about this color story that I really, really enjoy. It's very muted. It's very faded, like almost if you left like a bright quilt to hang on the line in the sun and the sun faded out those colors. That's what you get with this palette, and I feel like the intention is there. The thought is there with this palette. I love this center yellow row that kind of divides things. So we have this, not row, column, I'm sorry. We have this yellow column, and over here we have denim and purple cool tone shades, and then on this side we have our warmer shades. We have these pinks, we have these more like warm orangey leaning red shades. I like that the top row and the bottom row are all matte, and then the center row is different formulas, but we have these that are a very finely milled, beautiful, smooth shimmer with different kind of like reflect to it, but they look very soft and beautiful on the skin. And then these three are more intense, sparkle, heavy shimmers. Now, none of the palettes that I've talked about today have pressed glitter. So when you hear me say sparkle, shimmer, that's what I mean, not glitters. But this color story is just muted, but not boring. Pigmented, beautiful, very fresh and effortless, but still able to go dramatic with this bottom row down here. Last but not least, I have to talk about the Martine Cosmetics Diner palette. So this is Martine's Diner. So you kind of get that feel already. It looks like seats in a diner or like seats in a car. And opening this up, I see the diner inspiration. This is a very muted pastel leaning palette, but I won't call it completely pastel because we do have these reds here, and then we do have these deeper shades here too, so that you can darken it up. But overall, the palette leans very light, and immediately looking at this palette, I feel those diner vibes. It makes me want to sit up at the counter, get an Impossible burger, get a milkshake and some fries. That's how I feel. You know, like one milkshake, two straws. I love that. The embossing on the pan are beautiful. The packaging is beautiful. The formulas are very, very nice. The mattes are easy to blend. The shimmers are so smooth and beautiful. But the color story just really, really puts me in that moment. Like I want to play something on the jukebox and hang out with my friends. I love the vibe, but like I said, they elevated that color story. They elevated these kind of baby pinks and mint pastel blues and the silvers by adding in those reds and these dark shades. I think it just makes the palette more versatile and overall more interesting than some of the other like mid-tone light palettes that I see. All right, y'all, please do shop your stash. Let me know, do you have palettes that you think the color story is so interesting? I definitely could have talked about more, but I decided to pare it down for this video. If you want to see a video like this again from me, let me know. Maybe I could do that in the summer or at the end of the year, something like that. I love talking about palettes. I did tell you what was on my eyes, but I'm also wearing the Chucky lip duo from GlamLite and the eyeliner duo. I'm also wearing the blush duo from the set, but I went over it with my Unearthly Cosmetics Surrender Glowing Blush Palette. So kind of like a blush topper instead of a highlight today. So I'm using the shade Romantic. And then my lashes are BK Beauty and Risa Does Makeup. These are the lashes in the style Vegas. So that is the rest of the makeup that's on me. I hope you're having an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching. Check the description box if you have any questions at all, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye!